Hello, Samadan here. How have you been? It's been a few weeks since I've done a video, and I thought I'd do one in conjunction with the news that's gone out this week, literally yesterday, in the whole announcement that the auction houses are going to get merged. So I'm going to go through the Wowhead blog, which pretty much talks about that, but I'll give my own views and thoughts about what I've been doing in terms of my own gold making and how I feel this change is going to affect the markets. Now, I play on Shadowsong. It's a low pop server, and so I have that slow sales but slightly more expensive sales compared to, say, a high pop server, which generally gets smaller profit margins but more frequent sales. And so they each have their own economies and they generally average out. I've always been able to make gold on my server, and I'm looking forward to being able to do the same in the future. I don't think it's really going to change things with the change in the auction houses being merged in terms of the region commodities. It will probably mean my base materials are going to be cheaper, but then they've sometimes been really in short supply and really absurdly priced, which has meant things like legendaries have been really difficult to actually craft, and that was probably a bad example because legendaries use so many materials, but it just goes to show that crafting can be very affected by your materials. So in terms of what I've been doing, I mean, I haven't played WoW in the whole last week. I've been busy working in London, so my playtime is very, very sporadic at the moment. A quick look at my sales that have come through at the moment since I last listed on, which was a week ago. We've got a few bits and pieces here. Veiled Augment Runes always doing well. I am actually trying to sell some of my base materials as well, so trying to get rid of those ahead of this change is probably a good idea on someone on a server like mine. Still selling all my professions, so that's where my main goal making is, in the crafted professions. So I'm less affected by things like farming, which, I think that's a big major change for people who really enjoy farming, and my heart goes out to those people who are going to have basically their gold per hour slashed, and the competition they're going to have for selling raw materials is going to be much harder. So that's a difficult pill to swallow if you're certainly a farmer, but we'll get on to that a bit later in the Wowhead block. So in terms of my sales, that's not a huge amount, 3,000 gold. Not a lot's been going on really. I've just have listed all my auctions on, and already I think I've got a few sales. Let's just open up this first. We'll have a quick look. TSM has kind of settled down now that I've linked both my accounts, now that I've split two, so it's accurately tracking my total gold across both accounts, which is really nice. So with that collected, let's just have a look at my auctions. Yeah, there we go. Just from selling, you can see this waste of time. Someone wanted the achievement, and they have gone through and bought all the things they needed. The Death Silk Shoulders, Frostwoven Leggings, Heatherweed Tunic, and Windwool Hood. Now you've got to make sure that's the green one and not the blue one if you're crafting that. But look at those prices, and they're very nice, 3,000, 3,000, 2,000. See, they're not really affected by the material prices. The crafting cost on these is minimal. It's 2 gold to craft. Same with this one, and that's a reasonable markup for me on my server, so I'm not expecting sales of these type of things to change with the changes in the auction house, because these aren't part of the commodities. These are still my crafted thing. This is my little niche. Not everyone sells these. Obviously on my server, the number of times I get sales for these is going to be few and far between. Look at that, expired since last sale, 236. That's really nice to see. What total gold here, 1.3 million on all characters. 4 sold auctions, that's 15,000 coming in on there. So that's pretty good. Let's just quickly jump onto my other characters. Did I collect up the mail? Yes, I did. So what I'll do is, because I've got 2 accounts now, as I'm going to log out here. And whilst I'm logging out, I jump over to Bridget, who has 22,000 in sales. Quick Oxine Ring, nice 262 piece of gear, I think there. Master of Phaedrum Necklace, probably I only take a guess at to what that is. Probably a Crafter's Mark 1 or a Novice Crafter's Mark. But really nice. Good bit of dual crafting sales, and some of the raw materials. The belt selling there as well. And some Umbrals as well, which is quite interesting. Right, so 22,000 there. Just wait for these to load through, and then we can have a look at the other characters. I don't think we've got a lot of sales on the other characters on first impressions.
And I have prepared a few surprises.
Okay, so here I don't think I had a lot. 427 gold, not a lot at all. So we'll just grab that. Pharrell Morty, my blacksmith, and a few bits here. 10,000 gold, so we've got a Shadebound vest for 7,000, Dustlet Scale waistguard, some Failed Augment runes, a bit of raw materials there as well. So that's quite nice. Grab those. Nothing much on the alchemy front or the inscription side of things, but then I haven't really restocked in this character in a long while, so we're just actually selling some raw materials here. I'm just glad to sell some at the moment, so anything I can sell is great. 6,000 there, so I'll collect up that. Now, Brackar, my character that did the server transfer. Now, this is an interesting topic, obviously, for with the changes ahead. So we have sold a few of our items here. The pelts, 33,000 oxynor. I'm literally throwing these on for whatever price I can get them at. So 54,000 here. So that takes the gold he currently has at 122,000. Now, I did buy a token on this character as soon as I found out the pre-orders for Dragonflight came out. So it was about 327,000 gold I bought that token for. So if I add that onto this figure here, I think actually TSM will be able to track it a little bit better. We go with Brackar here, we were at 643,000. I must have bought 2 tokens, I think, at that point. Yes, looking at that. So 2 tokens down, and then back up to, oh, this says 68,000, but there we go, 122,000. But add that on to the 643,000 that we had there. We are just about breaking even in terms of making that transfer back. I'm not really in favour of this method of gold making, so in a way I'm glad it's going away with the fact that commodities are going to be spread across all realms. I mean, it was a fun experiment. I've done it a couple of times now, but in terms of gold making, it seemed very, very risky, and the effect was obviously I've affected my own markets and just crashing my own prices in many ways. So from my point of view, I think this was interesting, but it's not something I'm going to repeat. So here we are, we've got just about broken even on the 700,000. We have, in terms of listed auctions, 813,000 worth, so we could possibly make a little bit more by selling those. Some of the things that I have got is not commodities. Some of the stuff is things like these glyphs I picked up cheaply, and some legendaries which I still haven't sold, and am probably unlikely to sell given how sort of slow the market is on my server at the moment. But some of these commodities might sell. See if I can get rid of them over the next few days, certainly. So overall, we're at 1.4 million gold. So that's pretty decent. I've certainly bought enough for enough tokens for both accounts for this month. So in terms of targets on that front, very happy. Let's just look at the last month. Now, it's probably not representative because that says 50,000 gold there and 1.4 million gold there. I think that's probably down to my account syncing and TSM getting used to my 2 different accounts. It's probably more at this point at 900,000 going up to 1.4 million. So we're looking at, you can see the token price, the token purchases there in that. There's like 2 tokens down there. So we are doing not too bad, actually. In order to try and track my gold now from this point on, I could probably do what I used to do and just give 50,000 to each character and keep the pool on a different character. That might actually be quite useful. I'll go off and do that a bit later, I think, as we're at the start of the month, and then I can track next month's gold much more easily and see who's earned what in what profession. Awakening is probably be able to go back now to Shadow Song. The 30 days is probably over. Let's go over and just have a quick look at how we're going on with the pet sales on that front. We're over on Kazakh here. Now, I'm probably slightly tempted to leave this character here and just see what gold making is like on a different server. This is obviously much more higher population, so that could be interesting. See how alchemy does on a high pop server. Maybe even choose a second profession for that, because we've currently got herbalism, which is no good to me there. maybe, what would I choose on a high pop server? So the potions are obviously going to be quite low profit margin, and with the changes coming ahead, even less so. But what could I do differently in that sense? So obviously I could probably try and sell things using the transmutes. That might help. In terms of a secondary profession, inscription obviously pairs very well with that because you share the herbs. I've got that going now on Samadan over on Shadowsong. Maybe I could start collecting glyphs and things over on this server. What else would I possibly choose? It all depends on how quickly and how deeply I can go in a certain profession. Obviously, tailoring does really well. I'm fond of that. It's a tough call. I would probably, I think, in this instance, go alchemy and inscription, just because that's a really nice pair. But I haven't decided on that yet. We'll see how things go. But at the moment, we do have a load of auctions on at various prices. These are all my battle pets at the moment. Currently 1.6 million. A million of that is down to a not the gregarious girl. That was one I posted on for a million. Oh, there it is, the Guardian Cub. So those are obviously the high ticket ones, unlikely to sell for that price. In terms of gold we have at the moment, we have got 55,000 gold, so we have sold some pets in that time. So this is probably a good server because of its population to be selling some pets on. If I can get the sales, obviously it's a slow market, but that's kind of secondary. We'll see what we can do in terms of making gold, and I'll decide whether I'm going to stay here or transfer back. I kind of feel like I should. I'd probably quite like to do a faction change as well, because Awakening used to be a troll. Might be quite nice to go back to that. Maybe, it's another idea, maybe I can go back to Shadowsong and make myself a speed druid as a troll, and maybe do old dungeons. That could be fun. Even though, unlike a huge amount of gold, it could be just something fun to do running around at high speed. There's some great videos by Persephone on how to make a speed druid, so maybe that's another option. There's always something you can possibly do. So let's leave that for now. Gold making wise, really happy with where we've got so far. Let's dig a bit deeper into the WoW Economy blog and talk about everything that's going on there. So 234th edition of the WoW Economy blog. Been going quite a while now. And the big news, bit of a surprise this week, was the auction house commodities going region-wide. So there's a blue post here saying in patch 9.2.7, didn't even know there was going to be one of those, is this little post saying auction houses across all realms on a given region will now share commodity listings, gems, herbs, flasks, consumables, etc. Items that aren't commodities, like armor and weapons, will continue to be realm specific. So this is massive. This is a big change that's going to affect people from all different ways of gold making. Because normally each server has its own economy based on the farmers would go out and farm things, and they would get their gold per hour. They would sell those things on the auction house, and the profession people like myself would then go and buy those at whatever price was set by that server, and then set their profit margins above on that, and then sell them to the players. And then there was this flow of gold going around, and there were different ways to make gold. You could flip things, you could do all sorts of different things, and your server economy was largely self-contained. Sometimes, yes, people would transfer in with a bunch of materials and sell those. Done it myself. And sometimes people would go elsewhere and take the items with them and sell them on different servers. But largely, it would stay within that server. But everything that Blizzard has been talking about recently, about cross-faction raiding and being able to trade between characters, you can see that there's a shift towards making things more convenient for the players. And I'm all for that. I think generally if things are really easy and generally I think if things are really convenient for players and they can get the things they want when they want them, then that largely makes a much more enjoyable game for the mainstay anyway. So this change mostly will affect people who make gold through the following methods. So farming raw materials, that's pretty much out now because they're going to have a baseline for raw materials. Yes, you can still farm materials and go out and sell them, but you used to be able to do that on a low pop server and make a decent amount of gold per hour. Now that's going to be much more reduced, and so people are going to be less incentivized to do that. And also, you're going to have competition of selling your commodities across the entire region. Now, how quickly that's going to happen and whether it's going to propagate more cancel scannings is still, we're going to have to see how that settles down. Crafting consumables, that's going to really affect you because you are now competing across the whole region. And obviously, with both the materials and the consumables themselves being spread across the lowest price possible, the profit margins of these are going to be incredibly slim, if at all. Now, we used to do a lot of flipping of commodities, so buying up cheap ones and setting them at a higher price. That was really, really good way of making gold. You were starting out, my entire Let's Play series started out that way over on NA. That's kind of no longer really going to be an easy thing to do unless you have a huge amount of gold and can reset these markets. But I don't think that's really going to be happening a lot. So that's going to be very interesting. So that's going to be a shame that that market's kind of disappearing. Selling commodities cross-server through a transfer, I talked about this previously. I'm not very keen on it anyway, even though I've done it myself. So that's probably going to be a sort of, that's more of a niche thing anyway. So I think it's going to affect people less. But the big ones, I think, for the casual gold maker, certainly farming raw materials, crafting consumables, and flipping commodities. These methods of gold making are very much going to be so much high competition that it's going to be largely non-profit making, which is going to be a real shame. We're probably going to see a dampening down of the way people are going to make gold, and so we're going to have to shift and change and adapt. And maybe more people are going to start buying tokens. I mean, Mantheus talks about that in a later video. But first, I'll start with Want to Buy Gold, because he's returned after a long hiatus, and it's lovely to see him come up with a typical Reckles video, in-depth economy analysis of what this means. So he talks about the economics of perfect competition and parity and all these sorts of things that, to be honest, are a bit above my head, but it's really interesting to listen to his thoughts on the whole process and why he thinks this is going to potentially kill the economies and people might be just moving to a higher pop server because you might as well anyway, and how it's going to possibly affect farming and whether it's going to encourage more people to do multi-box gathering or using bots to cancel scan on the auction house. Lots of different things he goes into on the video, so really highly recommend giving that a watch. So, of course, on the WoW Economy Reddit, everyone talked about this. It was a big topic this week. Largely, people seemed quite pessimistic, but I think that's kind of a skewed perspective, perhaps, on the picture as a whole. But still, some very interesting thoughts on this. Homogenizing, I can never pronounce that. Spreading markets takes the fun out of figuring out niches on your server. At least some markets will be unaffected, like gear crafting. Some markets will be unaffected, like gear crafting. I feel this absolutely kills any chance of consumable crafting having decent profit margins. Yes, I pretty much agree with that, certainly. Not a fan at all, but I guess we're not the target audience for changes like this. I think that's very much the case. That was an interesting point in Reckles' video, talking about he thinks that perhaps this could be a way of shifting all of the commodities onto one central server that's in the Blizzard database, so that it takes a load off the auction house, which I think could be a really good idea. If it makes the auction house faster because of these being sort of more central, that could be really, really nice. It's so hard to actually tell how it's going to be at the moment with all the crafting changes coming in Dragonflight, which is very true. There's a lot of changes coming with professions, so just hoping there's a barrier to entry for a lot of the recipes. Yes, I definitely hope so with the way of specialization going, because that is going to be the way you make gold. Having depth in your crafting profession, certainly, both old world and current content. Mostly sucks because there are a lot of old world farms who used to do likely won't be affected by the new Dragonflight system. Yes, I mean, the whole Dragonflight thing is going to be very much the work order things and all of that is going to be very much specific to Dragonflight. They have talked they will expand it further. So how that market economy changes from a goal making point of view, we'll have to wait and see how it all plays out. For the average player, I don't think they're really making their gold by crafting equipment and gear. They're doing it either by farming or by flasks and chance, because they're typically the reliable markets and easy to get into. So profits on those are going to be really small, which is what we talked about earlier in terms of these easy to get into niches are going to be pretty much dead in the water now. I'm on a lower pop server and mainly craft, so I'm pretty excited. So similar to myself, really. Price of mats will likely go down. Agree on that, certainly. That's nice. We're not only one the auction house that's making something. What I'm more excited about is the availability of rarer mats, which will be very, very useful, because some things like the delicate, some things like the Queen's Garnets are really hard to get hold of. I actually bought some over with me when I did my last server transfer, because I just simply couldn't get them, and I certainly didn't want to bother doing all the raids for that. So that's pretty cool. And for gatherers, this is obviously a big change and could be really rough. But I think there will always be ways to adapt, which I totally agree on. Means there'll be more competition, but it also means more customers for that oddball stuff that's worth a lot of money. It just sits in the auction house forever. Could make some more oddball old world farms profitable again. Could be. It's still going to be interesting to see how this pans out. So yes, they may seem a bit pessimistic, these comments, and there's loads of them in the thread if you go in follow it on here. But I think what the point is here, such as the same as what happened with the auction house revamp in 8.3, it's an easier system for the average player, which means more people making use of the auction house and playing the game. Thus opens up more opportunities for me as a gold maker. For me, I'm all for stuff that makes things easier for the average player. We had that with the convenience and the revamp of the auction house originally, and we got this again in terms of like flattening the price of consumables, which I think a lot of players are really, really happy about. Matthews has his own video talking about this, and there's a couple of others I haven't linked to here, but I'd recommend going over and watching the ones from Penguin and Student and Zanzibar. In Matthews's video, he goes through sort of what's happening, why it's happening, and why he really thinks it's happening, such as encouraging more token price purchasing, and then what the overall effect is going to be in terms of making these easy to get into gold making methods more subdued in terms of their gold per hour, making it cheaper for the average player, and then completely killing things like the cross faction. Matthews calls it the grey import market, which I totally agree on as well. So to summarise much of that, so in general, the change seems to be favoured by the larger community. From looking at the comments here on Wowhead and other places, people are basically saying, yeah, this is great. Price of consumables is going to go down, and they don't like paying much as they were. People were really annoyed with the price of legendaries, and so I think they would be very happy to see the price of those come down. It does close off some easy gold making methods like farming and flipping commodities, which is going to be a shame, because that means that the average player perhaps is making less gold. We know that in Dragonflight the mission tables aren't going to be a thing, so that passive gold making, or that really easy to go out and do kind of gold making, is going to disappear. So what's going to happen to that flow of gold is going to be an interesting one. Obviously, making gold via server transfer and selling commodities no longer be profitable. That's fair enough. Rare materials might be more accessible to those on lower pop realms, which I'm actually really happy about. And then there's a general concern that this will promote more cancel scanning and bot gathering, because no one can compete with these commodities, because literally you list your things on. If they don't sell instantly, then there's no point keeping them on the auction house. You might as well cancel them and repost them on. So this is going to be interesting to see how this actually turns out in reality. Will we get more bots and things like that? I don't know. There's an interesting comment on by Kachak, who is well known for working across several, in fact, all of the servers in terms of doing buying and selling on different servers. And the partial region, he says, the partial region-wide auction house is going to be mega abusable by those with the most gold. You heard it here first. Now, I can only imagine this is going to be mass resetting markets and setting prices of certain things. I don't know how that would work out and what he's exactly implying here, but follow his channel, find out soon enough. So there we have it. Big news. We don't know how it's going to actually pan out overall in terms of the markets are obviously going to settle. There's going to be a big flattening of all of the base materials, and then the individual crafted items will probably overall, I would say, like the graph will go down like that, but the lower pop servers will still probably have slightly higher prices than the full pop servers, but the baseline will be flat now for everyone. So in many ways, there's going to be some lost opportunities, but who knows, there might be some more opportunities coming out of this. So on a different topic, slightly related, because I think this is where I think this is going to be where the niches are going to be found in terms of how you're going to be able to still make gold, and that's collecting all the recipes. I'm a big fan of this. Be warned, you could completely consume your life if you get into this. Having all the things add-on really does set you some wonderful targets, but also lots and lots of things to do. So collecting recipes, getting depth in your profession, even if you don't actually sell all these things, it's just a fun thing to do. And so Drylas64 here is getting started into it. I was asking sort of any tips and things, and there's loads of really good websites out here. Element Nova has Warcraft recipes, which is a variation on what Critney did originally, which isn't currently supported at the moment. So it's a similar kind of format, taking the data, and you can put in your character's recipes, and you can put in your character from whatever server you're on, and it'll tell you how much of the collected recipes you have, which is really nice. It says what you don't have and where to find it, which is really, really good to see, and you can filter out from profession to profession. Another one here suggesting about the Aldor Scribes rep swap. Wait until the Burning Crusade time walking, and then you can go down, get everything you need in one rep, and then swap over and do the other reputation. I've done this on my tailor. It's quite painful going from one to the other, but it's try and make the most of it with time walking. It does make it a little bit easier. But the other link here is another website, Data for Azeroth, which I think is really nice because it does show you recipes that you don't have, but it also has account rankings, and you can see where you rank on your account in terms of number of recipes collected. Now, I think Samadan was about 32 on Shadowsong before I split my characters across 2 accounts, and now obviously because those professions are split across 2, my ranking's gone right down to something like 180 or something like that, so it's less relevant to myself, but it's a nice little metric to track, certainly. And then obviously the big one here, the in-game add-on, all the things. You can filter this just to recipes, so you're not collecting anything else like transmog and stuff like that, and just focus on recipes. And every profession window you open up has a little window here of the things you haven't got, and then there's another window for whichever zone you're in. It tells you if there's anything in that zone that you haven't collected and who's selling it, where to get it from. So that's really, really cool. Highly recommend getting these add-ons and certainly having a look at these websites and filling out your professions. One of the 2 ways I suggest to make gold is, first, get every profession in the current expansion, and then get depth in each profession by learning the old world recipes and collecting all of these. And then between all of that, listing things on and finding out which ones sell on your server, that's where the magic lies, and that's where you can make a decent amount of gold, I think, no matter which server you're on. So that's the WoW Economy blog for this week, and what I've been doing and my thoughts on the whole changes we've got coming up here. I hope you enjoyed this video. I look forward to hearing your thoughts and seeing how this pans out. Until next time, happy gold making, and I'll see you very soon.